What's up, savvy expats? So we often talk about the many reasons on why to move to the Philippines, but the fact of the matter is, the Philippines isn't for everyone. And perhaps it may not be for you. That is why in today's video, we're diving into why the Philippines may not be your type of place flowing with milk and honey. And as always, if you want access to exclusive content, that'll all be in the link in the description down below. Alright, let's get into it. So reason number one, the Philippines may not be for you is if you don't like hot weather. Now this is an obvious reason, as most of you already know that the Philippines is a hot and humid country. And I believe that most expats coming here to the Philippines come here to experience the tropical weathers and get away from the cold weather of their previous country. So yes, say goodbye to snow, but say hello to sweating bullets. I suppose it really depends on what you prefer and if you can put up with the heat, because average temperatures in the Philippines usually range between 70 and 90 degrees Fahrenheit, or in Celsius, 21 to 32 degrees Celsius. The yearly average temperature typically comes in at 80 degrees Fahrenheit or 26 degrees Celsius. And I know it doesn't sound that bad, but speaking from experience, the sun here in the Philippines has much more of a harsh feeling, especially on the skin. So you know how they have the term sun-kissed when you get a tan? Well, here in the Philippines, it's more like sun-slapped. And depending on the time of year, the air really starts to feel stuffy and humid. But I must say, it really depends on your tolerance of heat. Because at least in Manila, around this time of the year at the end, the weather is perfect and it feels nice. Some, if not most expats in the Philippines actually don't mind the heat and sometimes even enjoy it. Others can't stand it because they're used to cooler environments. So all in all, it really depends on your personal preference. But if you're one that can't stand the hot weathers, the Philippines may not be for you. Now, for reason number two, the Philippines may not be for you, that is the Wi-Fi is slow. This is so much so that Vice News made a documentary entitled Living in a Country Where the Internet Sucks.
O diba? Ang tagal. Ganun pa, gumaganong-ganon pa, rumorolyo-rolyo pa siya.
Now, while it's not as bad as dial-up internet from the early 2000s, download speeds still lag behind its southeastern neighbors. For fixed broadband, the Philippines has an average download speed of 32 megabytes per second. Meanwhile, its southeastern neighbors like Singapore and Thailand is working with 220 and 247 megabytes per second. This means that the Philippines is ranked at the 100th spot in global internet speeds. But the irony is that fixed broadband in Thailand and Singapore cost about the same as the Philippines. Aside from its slothful speeds, internet connectivity in the Philippines is among the costliest in the world. According to a 2020 study by Surfshark, the Philippines was ranked 82 in terms of internet affordability out of 85 countries. So with high internet costs and slow speeds, this has really become a stumbling block to Filipinos. I mean, think about it. Our daily lives pretty much depend on the internet. Businesses, online sales, and online schooling especially struggles due to slow internet. Reading an article from Vice magazine, some businesses lose up to $1,000 per week because they can't receive orders due to slow internet. So I highly suggest, if your livelihood depends on the internet or perhaps you work remotely, reconsider moving to the Philippines. Either that or just choose to live in a larger city like Manila, because internet in bigger cities in Manila like Makati and BGC tend to have much faster internet connectivity. It's the remote islands like Siargao, Siquijor, and Palawan that especially struggle with slow internet speeds. Another reason why internet speeds in the Philippines is so slow is because two companies practically dominate the whole space. Globe and PLDT run the internet scene here, so there's little incentive from smaller companies to compete by improving their services. In turn, larger players like Globe and PLDT can thrive without improving their internet speeds because people here have no choice but to use them. Now, for reason number three, the Philippines may not be for you, that is below average healthcare. So this is something that I already covered several times, but I can't make this video without adding this point to the list. Because most hospitals in the Philippines aren't up to Western standards, healthcare is not up to par. Medication is sometimes not available, and medical service is not always the best. So if you deal with ongoing illnesses or health problems, the Philippines may not be for you. We all should prioritize our health, so I recommend staying in a place that caters to your certain health situation. That being said, I have mentioned in the past that Manila has some good private hospitals, but when it comes to public hospitals in the Philippines, it's not very good. So all in all, if you need constant medical attention or need to be nearby a doctor, either reconsider moving to the Philippines or choose to live in a bigger city like Manila. Now, for the fourth reason the Philippines may not be for you, that is because of scams. So this point is in particular for those of you that just don't want to live in a country where scamming is prevalent. I'm sure we all don't, but at the end of the day, just watch your surroundings surroundings and stay out of sketchy areas. Because if you go back to my scams to avoid in the Philippines video, there are multiple comments that have mentioned that they would have fallen for at least half of those scams. So be aware, especially as a foreigner, that you're going to be a bigger target for getting scammed. Another way to put it is you'll attract scammers like a bear to honey. But of course, scams can happen in any country you go to. Just be aware of your surroundings and be vigilant, and you should be fine. Now, for the fifth reason the Philippines may not be for you, that is the food. So this in particular goes for those of you that don't like Filipino food. I know there's a lot of foreigners that find the food to be too exotic. Dishes like balut, dinuguan, and intestine barbecue may not be your jam. And so, if you are a picky eater and live away from bigger cities like Manila, then moving to the Philippines may not be in your best taste. On the other hand, if you live in a bigger city like Manila, you by all means have access to Western foods. Texas Roadhouse, TGI Fridays, Denny's, and Chili's are all restaurants that you have available here in Manila. And I'll also add, if you are a healthy eater, the Philippines may not be the best place. The cuisine in the Philippines consists of a lot of fried, oily, and barbecued foods, so it may not be the best place to cater to your diet. For me personally, I like it. In moderation, of course, like lechon, stuff like that, delicious. If, however, you buy local ingredients and home cook them at home, then you could by all means have a healthy diet. Because it is an island after all, so you have access to fruits, veggies, and fish, and all types of foods like that. But overall, this category especially depends on your preference and personal taste. Now, for the sixth reason the Philippines may not be for you, that is overcharging. As you are a foreigner, you are more prone to getting overcharged and taken advantage of. Most Filipinos will see you as someone with lots of money, as it is the misconception with foreigners here in the Philippines. And so with that in mind, they'll increase the price of grocery items, food bills, and other goods. This mostly happens in wet markets, carinderias, and other vendors. Also taxi cabs, tour guides, and other services. That's why many foreigners, my family included, choose to shop at more established places like malls. Because there, you'll find set prices where the people can't scam you and you know what you're getting. So I recommend you either do what my family does and shop at established shops and malls, or you bring a relative, your spouse, or any local to help you shop. Moving on to the seventh reason the Philippines may not be for you, that is, we have loud noises. If you're one who cannot stand the sound of barking dogs, loud vehicles like jeepneys, crowing roosters, and karaoke at 2 a.m. in the morning, the Philippines may not be for you. It's no secret that these are all distasteful things about living in the Philippines. And of course, a lot of us want restful nights and peaceful mornings, so crowing roosters and karaoke does not help with that. The best thing I could suggest is 1. Talk with your neighbors and come to an agreement for peace and quiet past a certain time if they are the type that does karaoke. 2. Live in a place with minimal or further neighbors. 3. If you plan on living in a condo, choose to live on a higher floor. And 4. Get some earplugs because you will inevitably experience these loud sounds. For me personally, the hardest sound to deal with is the loud jeepneys and vehicles, but that's because I live in a city environment. Depending on where you live, the sounds you hear will vary. Now, for the eighth and last reason the Philippines may not be for you, that is if you do not like crowds. One thing that I noticed about the Philippines is that everyone herds together. Whether it be a trending business idea like milk tea, a certain hotspot, or a place to eat at, everyone in the Philippines kind of sheep together. This could likely be attributed to the strong sense of community here, but that's just an observation that I made. So when coming here to the Philippines, even when walking in the mall, you'll notice many crowds. Or perhaps at a trendy coffee shop in the city that doesn't even have good coffee, you'll see large crowds gathering. I think it's mostly due to social media and word of mouth that large crowds tend to gather. So if you're a one-man wolf pack or large crowds isn't your cup of tea, then the Philippines may not be for you. But that is if you're living in a place like Manila or just crowded areas. I know some of you guys want to move to more secluded, remote places in the Philippines. So there you have it, savvy expats. That is 8 reasons the Philippines may not be for you. I still believe that there are spectacular reasons to move to the Philippines, but I want you guys to know the downsides of living in the Philippines just as well as the upsides. Now, if you want to see similar videos to this, let's get this video to 500 likes. And so thank you for watching, savvy expats, and I'll see you in the next video. God bless.